Welcome back to Bionic Life. Today we are going to be readying a Ford F350 single rear wheel, not a dually, regular cab, long bed pickup truck. Basically it's one of those commercial fleet trucks that you see running around everywhere with every construction company known to man. This came from a government auction. It was a county agency owned it. I think it spent its life in the parking lot with a salt box in the back and a Western plow hung on the front. It only had 16,000 miles on it when I bought it, and I thought it was a great deal. Well, what you find out in Northeast Ohio with all the salt that they put on the roads and a truck that lives its life in that environment, things rust to pieces. This needs to go on here. But we have one slight problem, and that is Northeast Ohio winters. We have a few problems. One of them is this transmission cooling line, and we'll have to address that. It's rusted out. I'll show you it's from the underside. We have a transmission cooling line to change. We have an oil pan to change. Going to change this and the gasket and the brake lines. Rusty and crusty brake lines that you find on your typical Northeast Ohio beater with a heater snowplow. This line I started pulling off. It was broke right there. It actually rusted right. Get it a little closer for you. That end right there actually rusted off. It goes to the passenger side rear brake. This brake line here is not terribly bad. It's 53 bucks. This line over here is 70 some, I think is what they quoted. So we're gonna replace these with NICOP and just 1/4 inch 3/16 line fittings with a 1/4 inch NTP thread, I believe is what it has. Ended up with a little bit of a snafu last night. The line is right here. I cut it off using these nippers and then used a socket to pull this fitting out of this block. This is the line that goes to the front. The line travels along here. There's a bracket here, it's rusted off, and I pulled the whole line assembly, rubber and steel, off the caliper. To get this Ford on the road and safe to plow snow this winter, I backed it on the rack, and as I was backing, I didn't really know that this was a problem. I haven't driven it in a few months. The rear brakes, both of them, rusted out. Now the OEM lines come with like a rubberized or a plasticized coating on it, and it kind of hides the condition of the line. If you get a little nick apparently in that, and you get a little moisture in there, you have rust. And it's the bane of vehicles in Northeast Ohio. So what we're gonna do today is replace this and this with a piece of NICOP, and I'm practicing my double flares, which I'm not very good at. We'll get into that in a minute. I attempted to save the hose, but I cannot get this fitting out of here. I would have had to have made a new bracket if I was to reuse this, or at least weld something on here real quick. Luckily, Lakeshore Auto Parts had just the rubber line assembly, and that'll allow us to use some of this NICOP, which is a nickel copper type of line. It's much more forgiving than steel. It allows you to, this is a scrap piece because I tried to double flare. I was practicing that and without much luck. But this is super flexible. You can bend it without having a tubing bender and it won't kink as easily. It will kink, but you really have to work at it. So we're gonna replace the steel line with NICOP and the appropriate fitting. We're right there. So let's get started. I'm gonna try to do a couple of decent flares. So we have this little die button or adapter. This is the first step in forming the flare. And it says to use a little brake fluid or lube. I'm just gonna dunk it in some brake fluid that I have in this bottle cap here. I can get it out of there without dumping it. So it's kind of nice and lubed up. We'll stick it in there. Now this is the actual yoke, flaring yoke, I think they call it. We'll slip it on, pivot it, bring it up. It looks like I have to loosen that some more. You set that so the point, if I can get a good shot of this, so that the point is in there's a dimple in the back side of this die or forming tool, or just, I don't know what the heck they call it. I should get the correct nomenclature for this, but I say I don't do this for a living, so. But I'm thinking once you get this halfway aligned, you want to make sure when you're applying the pressure that you're putting the point of the flaring tool that's in this yoke, that you put the point directly in the center, and this die button is sitting, or what do they call it, an adapter. It's a 3/16 adapter for the 3/16 line, to make sure it's basically flat and parallel to the toolbar, to the flaring bar, I guess they call it, in all axes. So I just kind of rotate it, make sure it's flat. So that tells me it's not, that the line is flat, and that it should give me a decent flare. It should be centered up as well. So let's give it a twist and see what happens. This can be a little bit of a problem sometimes. It looks a little off center. It doesn't look concentric. I use that word concentric. It looks a little like it's favoring the right in as far as the camera screen right. We'll finish it out and see what it looks like. Through the magic of editing, you didn't get to see all my other failures. I will put those on display for you right now. I think we have a serviceable brake line unit. The centerpiece is the one I ended up cutting too short, but I kept practicing on it. So it actually has two ends that have failed on it. So there's a total of 7 attempts to get a decent flare. This is not how I wanted this video to end, but unfortunately we're gonna have to break this brake line project on this Ford F350 single rear wheel, fleet side, regular cab truck. We're gonna have to break it up into 2 parts. And why is that? Is because the AutoZone brake line flaring tool that I borrowed is a piece of garbage.